To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul.
Sounds like the United States government is weaponizing itself against God.
This isn't about me, it's bigger.
The FBI can't tell us who planted pipe bombs on January 6th. They can't tell us who leaked the Dobbs decision. They can't tell us who put cocaine at the White House. But they were able to spy on a presidential campaign, lie to a FISA court, investigate parents showing up at a school board meeting, and of course saying if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're somehow an extremist. All that because I think the FBI is driven by politics today.
Woe to them in those days. If you get woed by God, I'd suggest you stop what you're doing.
We've heard from Americans targeted by their government, not just conservatives, but also Democrats.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here at the Speak and See Show. Please like, subscribe, and click that notification button so when we get information out, you can get information in. Marcus Allen, former federal FBI agent, goes off in Congress on what the FBI did to him because he liked Donald Trump. Yeah, right. Grab a drink. This is going to be good.
To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul.
President Trump has never read Project 2025, much less adopted it. Unlike the viewpoint adopted by the sitting vice president, which is that we should have taxpayer-funded sex change operations for illegal aliens in prison. And I try to be a little open-minded when I hear a provocative argument, and I just sort of wonder, when would I be in favor of taxpayer-funded sex change operations for the illegal aliens? And maybe if it was mandatory. You know, maybe if it wasn't optional, but mandatory, it would be a pretty substantial deterrent at the border.
This isn't about me, it's bigger.
The FBI can't tell us who planted pipe bombs on January 6th. They can't tell us who leaked the Dobbs decision. They can't tell us who put cocaine at the White House. But they were able to spy on a presidential campaign, lie to a FISA court, investigate parents showing up at a school board meeting, and of course saying if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're somehow an extremist. All that because I think the FBI is driven by politics today. We've heard from Americans targeted by their government, not just conservatives, but also Democrats. Whistleblowers described the security division of the FBI as, quote, a toxic work environment. Investigators were asking employees about their colleagues questions like, did they support President Trump? Are they opposed to COVID vaccinations? And we know they asked this because there's a questionnaire that they used, actual questionnaire that the FBI used to have colleagues snitch on their fellow workers. According to whistleblowers, the Security Division leadership under the command of Deputy Assistant Director Jeffrey Veltri created an environment where, quote, it was very common for investigators to ask inappropriate questions of an employee's colleagues, the content of which could never have been used to revoke a person's clearance. And by the way, what is Mr. Veltri up to now? The guy who during his time at the Security Division was described as being adamantly anti-Trump. He's leading the investigation into the second assassination attempt on President Trump in Miami. He's the special agent in charge in Miami. Mr. Marcus Allen is a whistleblower.
Wait, what? The man who on trial for weaponizing the FBI against anti or pro-Trumpers is heading the investigation for the second assassination attempt against Donald Trump? What? Can you believe that? Okay, this video is not about that. It's not about that, but why would you put somebody who doesn't like Donald Trump in to head the investigation of Donald Trump? Is this like a JFK thing? JFK when he was assassinated thing? I'm just asking. Things make you go, Let me know what you think down below.
And by the way, what is Mr. Veltri up to now? The guy who during his time at the Security Division was described as being adamantly anti-Trump. He's leading the investigation into the second assassination attempt on President Trump in Miami. He's the special agent in charge in Miami. Mr. Marcus Allen is a whistleblower and former staff operations specialist with the FBI. He has served more than 20 years as an intelligence professional. Prior to joining the FBI, Mr. Allen served in the United States Marine Corps, including in Iraq, Kuwait, and Japan. He received multiple awards for his service and achievement in both the Marine Corps and the FBI. Despite his track record of a commitment to his country, the FBI retaliated against Mr. Allen for making protected disclosures. After having his security clearance ended for more than 2 years, his retaliation claims were vindicated, and he reached a settlement with the FBI. Mr. Allen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the invitation to testify today. My name is Marcus Allen. I'm here to speak with the committee about how the FBI weaponized the security clearance process to retaliate against me for protected whistleblower activity. In late 2021, I raised concerns about the FBI director's testimony about the January 6th Capitol riot, not out of political motivation, but out of a duty to truth and integrity. This act, which I believe to be in the spirit of transparency and accountability, led to unexpected and severe consequences. Almost exactly 3 years ago today, I forwarded news articles to my superiors and others within the FBI about January 6th. It was literally one of my job duties to keep my colleagues informed about open source intelligence related to their cases. As a result of simply doing my job, the FBI accused me of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. The FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States, suspended my security clearance, suspended my pay, and refused to allow me to obtain outside employment or even accept charity. This once storied institution, whose initials ironically stand for fidelity, bravery, and integrity, was punishing me for bravely challenging their integrity while they questioned my fidelity. The suspension ultimately lasted for 27 months. During that time, the FBI held my family and me in indefinite limbo, awaiting a final decision. Determined to not lose our home, my wife and I took early withdrawals from our retirement accounts to survive. It became clear that the FBI, with endless resources, the American people's money, was trying to destroy me financially so that I would give up. This is a fear of countless potential whistleblowers who see the personal cost of integrity. There are no words strong enough to describe the impact the FBI's lies about me have had on me and my family. The stress has taken a toll on our health, and our children have suffered, traumatized by the thought of our door getting kicked in or dad not coming home. The battle for truth and justice will cost you, but the arduous good is worth it. The FBI's restoration of my clearance earlier this year, thanks to the efforts of Empower Oversight and the American Center for Law and Justice, was absolute vindication. It's a point I would not have reached without the prior help of Bigley Ranish and Judicial Watch. However, the experience is also a stark reminder of the system's flaws. It took legal battles, public scrutiny, and patience over 3 long years. No other FBI whistleblower has ever had his clearance restored as I did. Garrett O'Boyle and his family are still suffering in the same limbo we were, with no access to due process and no limit on the FBI's ability to delay and avoid independent accountability. How many other whistleblowers remain silent, fearing the same ordeal my family and Garrett's family faced with little hope of vindication at the end? Despite the stress and uncertainty, I've never once regretted standing up for truth. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience. Indeed, my family and I persevered due to our strength and faith, God's grace, and the sacraments. If you do not worship God, then you will worship something else. You can either serve God or you can serve mammon, but you can't serve both. This has been a purification. While we lost material items, we gained more important things. We've stored up for ourselves treasures in heaven. What we have gained spiritually has far outweighed what was lost materially. John Adams noted that the framework of our country was built for a moral and religious people, and unfit for the governance of any other. James Madison notes the duty to honor God is precedent, both in order of time and degree of obligation to the claims of civil society. Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe. I recently learned about comments made by Mr. Jeffrey Veltri suggesting I was delusional for believing in and seeking guidance from the Holy Spirit. Mr. Veltri currently serves as special agent in charge of the Miami field office, but at the time he is an executive at Security Division overseeing security clearance decisions. To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul. This isn't about me, it's bigger. I am hopeful that the truth of what happened will be fully revealed and deter the FBI from doing the same injustice to others. Though the path may be difficult, I must plead with other employees who have witnessed wrongdoing that they find the courage to speak up. You're not alone, nor will you ever be. Psalm 139 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" I've been blessed to be supported by God's sanctifying grace, the blessed sacrament, men and women of goodwill, other whistleblowers, the charity of the American people, prayers and great attorneys along the way, like Tristan and Jason of Empower Oversight. Potential whistleblowers, please do not be silenced by the FBI's mistreatment. We are all here to support you if you choose to come forward. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Equally important is the awareness and involvement of the American people. This is your country. While I feel vindicated now in getting back my security clearance, it is sad that in the country for which I fought as a Marine, the FBI was allowed to lie about my loyalty to the United States for 3 years. Unless there is accountability, it will keep happening to others. Better oversight and changes to security clearance laws are key to stopping the abuses suffered by whistleblowers like me. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Peace and all good.
We'll get into the other part of the interview shortly after this. I just want to say, what do you think about that? Is the government weaponizing against Christians? Is it the Democratic Party, and maybe a lot of the Republicans too, Antichrist? Antichrist. That's what they're trying to kind of get out is the "in God we trust." This is more wanting to be a government of "in government we trust." And I don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me either, Marcus. And I want to salute you and thank you for this awesome testimony that you're giving today. And there are more for you than against you, my friend. Let me know what you think down below. Please like, subscribe while you're at it. Let's get back into it.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Peace and all good.
Mr. Allen, does a person's political beliefs, and most specifically holding conservative views, disqualify someone from serving in the FBI?
No, ma'am, they do not.
Well, then, based on your experience as an FBI veteran and target of the DOJ's unlawful acts, why do you think this political purity campaign is ongoing inside the FBI?
I'm not fully aware of why they're getting rid of people with more conservative views or potentially not wanting people to speak out at this time, ma'am.
Well, and I think your testimony is that they also are trying to get rid of anyone who holds Christian values and Christian beliefs. Is that your experience as well?
That is my experience, especially when you see the comments that were leveled against me and the findings during the investigation.
So we have the gentleman sitting next to you ranting and raving about this Project 2025. I doubt that he really understands anything about it, but ranting and raving about that, but doesn't seem to be at all bothered by the fact that you were targeted because you were a conservative and a Christian. Do you find that odd?
I do find it a bit surprising. We shouldn't be targeting groups of people within our organizations because of firmly held belief or any kind of political standpoint.
Mr. Allen, I'm sorry for what the federal government did to you. I think it's an absolute crime against humanity the way that you were treated. I respect your faith, respect your loyalty to this country, and we all recognize that what the FBI did was wrong. We thank you for being here, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Allen, September 29, 2021, you sent an email questioning Director Wray's testimony in front of Congress. You said in that email, there is good possibility the DC elements of our organization are not being forthright about the events of January 6th. You remember that email?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't send that to anyone. You sent that to the people you're supposed to send it to, members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, the very next day I find to be interesting, on September 30th, 2021, the next day, just so happened your 5-year reauthorization for your security clearance came due, and they said, no problem. Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. After all, he's had it for 20 years, right? Yep. That happened the next day.
Correct, sir.
Decorated Marine veteran, employee of the year at the Charlotte field office, had a security clearance for 20 years. They reauthorized your security clearance. Something else happened that next day. Your email got forwarded to the security division and to Mr. Veltri. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then 19 days later, Mr. Veltri opened an investigation into your security clearance status. I get all those facts right, Mr. Levitt? Is that what happened with Marcus in those 2 days? And then 19 days later?
Yes, except for from what we can tell, Veltri directed that day that it be opened. It's just that the underlings under him didn't carry that out until 19 days later.
Yeah. And he directed, they look into a guy, decorated Marine veteran, held a security clearance for 20. They look into him because because Mr. Allen said there's a chance the FBI leadership hasn't been square with us, right?
That's correct.
And he cited a New York Times article. They thought the same thing. And oh, by the way, there's the history that we all know about. FBI spied on the president's campaign, lied to the FISA court, investigated parents at school board meetings, said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. So we got all that history, and he gets investigated for that because he simply questioned the leadership, went through the appropriate channels. Mr. Horowitz, did Mr. Veltri and the people at the Security Division follow the standard process?
They did not.
They did not. In fact, isn't it true that, Mr. Levitt, isn't it true that some of the people, I think you cited 4 of them in your statement, 4 people, the initial investigator, the second investigator, the first adjudicator, and another adjudicator, all got reassigned. They all agreed that Mr. Allen should keep his security clearance. This investigation shouldn't have happened, and they get reassigned or something happens to them.
4 of them all did not recommend that his clearance be, that there be a negative action on it. 2 of them were reassigned.
2 were reassigned. Some of them are whistleblowers now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Man, if that's not political, I don't know what is. Oh, and they didn't stop there. They piled on. They also said, Mr. Allen, he questioned whether he should get the vaccine or not. They came after him for that. Is that right, Mr. Levitt?
Yes.
And then they went after his faith. Direct attack on the First Amendment. Because he's a Christian, because he's a Catholic, because he takes his faith seriously, oh my goodness, we got to take his security clearance away from him, even though he served our country, decorated Marine, and held a security clearance for 20 years. That sure looks political to me, Inspector General Horowitz. Does it look political to you?
Well, Congressman, as I said earlier, we've seen issues with the FBI and how it's treated whistleblowers, frankly, across the spectrum. I agree with you, it's very concerning that would be done here.
We know they're political because while all this is going on, they used the questionnaire. Isn't that right, Mr. Levitt? Isn't that right? They used this questionnaire to people they wanted to snitch on folks like Marcus Allen. They gave him a questionnaire.
Those were used in the case of a handful of employees, and I know that Mr. Horowitz's office is looking at that. I think it's important to note that the questionnaire wasn't the only thing, right? That these questions were asked across
I'm talking
the board.
about the way they piled on to go after Mr. Allen and keep his security clearance and keep his pay from him for 27 months. And they did the same thing to Garrett O'Boyle. And what that has meant, as you indicated in your testimony, what that has meant to his family and Mr. O'Boyle's family. And this questionnaire said, did anyone ever vocalize support for President Trump? All right, you're allowed to say things about the President of the United States when you work in the FBI, aren't you, Mr. Horowitz?
I'm sorry.
You're allowed to say you support a president. You're allowed to say that in the FBI.
Absolutely, those questions are highly inappropriate.
And you're allowed to decide what kind of health decisions you're going to make with your own body, right?
Correct.
Those shouldn't be grounds for saying you're somehow disloyal to the country, but that's what they did. Highly inappropriate questions being asked of witnesses during security clearance investigations. That's your testimony, right, Mr. Horowitz?
That's correct.
And he got reinstated just recently. Marcus Allen you got reinstated, right, Marcus?
Yes, sir.
Why haven't they given you your money?
I am not aware why it's taking them 4 months to cut a check for all the back pay. I have no idea why it's taking that long.
They put you through pure hell for 27 months, falsely accused you. They go through the process. 4 people get reassigned because they agree with you, but the politics of Mr. Veltri, who, oh, by the way, as Mr. Levitt pointed out, is now running the second assassination investigation on President Trump in Miami. I find that just astonishing. And they won't pay you.
Right, we're still waiting for the payout.
When was the final agreement? When was the final settlement with the FBI? What was the date, Mr. Levitt?
June 1st.
Well, they've had time. Doesn't take that long to write a check, for goodness sake. So he's still in waiting. That's how our FBI treats a good man who has served our country for 20 plus years. It's ridiculous. And yet the Democrats say there's no weaponization. You got to be kidding me.
President Trump has never read Project 2025, much less adopted it. Unlike the viewpoint adopted by the sitting vice president, which is that we should have taxpayer-funded sex change operations for illegal aliens in prison. And I try to be a little open-minded when I hear a provocative argument, and I just sort of wonder, when would I be in favor of taxpayer-funded sex change operations for the illegal aliens? And maybe if it was mandatory. Maybe if it wasn't optional, but mandatory, it would be a pretty substantial deterrent at the border. But to the matter at hand, Mr. Allen, it's good to see you again. you came last year and you told us about these terrible things the Department of Justice was doing to you, and you've testified today you still don't think the Department of Justice has treated whistleblowers like yourself and others fairly. Is that your testimony?
That's correct. The treatment is unfair.
Do you agree with that assessment, Mr. Horowitz?
As I said in my testimony, Congressman, I think putting someone like Mr. Allen on unpaid leave for 2+ years is unfair while you're trying to adjudicate.
Yeah, no, I get
that. There needs to be a process here that
well,
happens promptly.
The process was to punish these people and to make an example of them. That's obvious to everyone. They saw improper actions at the FBI and DOJ. They blew the whistle on it, and then the process was the punishment, and it was the point. I think that's how Mr. Allen feels. Is it?
Correct. The process in this instance definitely felt like the punishment.
Yeah, so they've done it to you. They've done it to others. Mr. Horowitz says it shouldn't have been done. And so now I want to be a little reflective about this with Congress. Mr. Allen, you've seen since you have given us this testimony, us continue to pass continuing resolutions that put no consequence on the DOJ or the FBI for what they've done to you and your colleagues.
They make you uncomfortable until you give in. Just as we saw they were doing with the COVID mandates, as the COVID czar himself said how they did it. And this is the man who was in charge of COVID in New York. He said this.
You're going to have to do it this way. And so we came up with this metaphor. We're going to climb this ladder. We're going to first start voluntarily, and then we're going to be pushing it.
So the way we do it in public health is we make it very uncomfortable to be unvaccinated. The vaccine, it's like, oh, you can't get a job. You can't go to a restaurant. Kid can't go to school. It's like, I'm just going to get vaccinated.
So was it technically kind of forcing you?
Yeah, that's what you force people by making it really uncomfortable.
And the process is the punishment. Let me know what you think down below.
Do you think Congress has appropriately protected whistleblowers?
I do not, Congressman, and I think the policy recommendations can be put forward that there can be bipartisan support for to protect whistleblowers going forward in the future.
Absolutely. I mean this in no way as a partisan critique. Matter of fact, it's a bipartisan critique that we all own.
Yep.
Because we see the evidence that you get mistreated. We hear from the experts like Mr. Horowitz that this is totally off book. It's obvious to anyone with a brain they're doing it to hurt you and to make an example out of you. And what do? We just sign the check. And we just send it over. You know what we should put in any continuing resolution? That until you get paid and until the rest of the whistleblowers get their back pay, maybe the FBI director doesn't get his paycheck. Maybe the attorney general shouldn't get his paycheck. Maybe the FBI director shouldn't get the use of the private jet that he likes to fly around the country on so much. You know, they enjoy all of the accoutrements of their position, and you end up screwed. And we're okay with it, apparently. Any member who votes for these continuing resolutions is voting to perpetuate the punishment that has been instituted on the whistleblowers. And while we want to talk about the weaponization of the Justice Department, rightfully so, we write the check for it, and we underwrite the debt for it. And it is sickening to me.
It's disappointing that we need this hearing. Mr. Allen, I want to apologize for what's happened to you. Our country should treat you better. How have you seen the FBI change as someone who moved up through the ranks?
I would say that, unfortunately, in my experience with the culture at the FBI, it's very easy for leaders there to kind of impose their wills on their subordinates. It's a culture where there are a lot of careerists and blue flamers who'll do what they need to climb up the charts and the ladders. And if that includes burning other agents or subordinate employees to get to where they want to get in the organization, whether that's for power or money concerns, that's something I've observed in the culture of the FBI since I started there in 2008 as a contractor, worked for a couple of years, and then I got on officially with the Charlotte field office in late 2015. So I'd like to say that this is, from my personal experience, a sea change, but from what I've seen, there have always been vain careerists within the organization who will destroy people in order to climb the charts.
So safe to say we're not always promoting the best and brightest.
I would concur with that statement.
How do we need to change the culture to get it back on track?
I think there needs to be more accountability, and there needs to be a high focus on moral and ethical behavior within the organization. And I think outside checks and balances via policy change where the Bureau isn't allowed to simply just review their own conduct, to truly have an external watchdog force that can actually cause punitive change and enact measures in the organization. I think that's a big part of it. That's what I would advocate for. But I know a lot of the folks that join the FBI, they get into it, and it's not quite what they expected once they get on the inside. So there's a lot of cultural change just from the historical culture of the place that has to change. And I'd like to tell you that I'm shocked that this is where the FBI has come today. But frankly, I'm not shocked at all that this kind of lawless conduct could have occurred within the walls of the organization.
Yeah, sad, but I've heard it from many other people, and frankly, you felt the blunt end of it. And again, hopefully we can make this right swiftly, and you serve out a good career there. Thank you for your service.
And I have a simple question for you, yes or no. Do you believe that career employees like yourself should have your job taken away even if you've done your job well and followed agency rules? Do you think it's right to be fired just because you have political disagreements with those above you?
No, it's not right to persecute anyone for their political or religious beliefs, especially in an organization where there's supposed to be the free flow of ideas.
Okay, I appreciate your answer and your honesty, and I absolutely agree with you.
And I recognize myself for 5 minutes. And Mr. Allen, I'm going to give you a little notice. You've written some notes. As far as I'm concerned, you're the person I'm most interested in hearing from. I'm from Charlotte. I've been to the Charlotte field office. I know some people there. I was extraordinarily impressed by you and the other whistleblowers when you previously appeared before the subcommittee. I'm impressed by you again. I haven't been able to be here the whole time. I'm going to yield you some time, just if you have things that you wish to say in just a moment. But the first thing I'm going to say before I do that, and then I'm going to give Mr. Jordan the rest of my time, is I'm just overwhelmingly troubled by the fact that no one seems to be able to do much about what has happened to you. You got the Inspector General, very respectable person. You've done a lot of things that have been historic, but you issue a management alert. And to me, it sounds ridiculous to say you don't think these guys at the FBI, the senior managers, understand that they shouldn't retaliate against somebody by putting them under extreme personal hardship while they engage in a completely baseless persecution over their security clearance, and they leave them in limbo for 27 months, and to this moment haven't paid what I understand to be the consideration under the settlement that's been reached. That is astonishing. And if that's not astonishing enough, that all you can do is issue an alert, Congress does absolutely nothing. In the majority party, not one thing to impose on the Department of Justice or the FBI an appropriate sanction for what they've done. And we have a hearing about it, and everybody in the minority party, they're fearing what Donald Trump would do in the next administration while they sit here and they look at the guy who's been persecuted by the FBI. And everybody in the room understands it. Mr. Allen, do you have comments you wish to make? I'll give you about a minute and a half, and then I want to turn the rest of my time to Mr. Jordan.
Yes, sir. I would just say that I consider the hearing today my last act of service as a public servant for the United States of America. And I'll give you my professional opinion. I was an intel professional for our country for many years, and I would give recommendations, and I'd also look at indications and warnings. So I would offer this to the American people as my warning to them. Since this is a warning to the American people, I say, I personally have no confidence that the FBI will rein in its own conduct. I've been persecuted along with Garrett, Steve and Kyle, and countless other whistleblowers. It is my opinion that the Bureau used reprisal and fear to control the workforce. It has been a seemingly effective tactic. I personally believe that there are no current effective checks and balances against them conducting lawless action with any type of correction in a legitimate time frame. I welcome the work of the IG, but I think any type of lawless action, there's no legitimate time frame to rein them back in. Their ability to overclassify information can allow them to stonewall forever. To the American people, you have a duty as a citizen to vote, and I strongly urge you to do so. It's how you participate in the American experience. I know people have doubts about election integrity, but you must vote. It is your claim. Stake your claim and don't forfeit it willingly. Have your voice heard. My other recommendations are in the natural order. First, vote. The second is the Second Amendment. Arm yourself and know how to defend yourself. Make 3 to 4 friends in your neighborhood and promise to come to each other's mutual aid in times of hardship. And during the Great Depression, people stocked up a pantry. So I think that's a good practice, especially in our economic times, and make sure you have 3 to 4 months of food. And as a person of faith, I'd say pray the rosary, go to the First Friday devotions. That's for everybody, all my brothers and sisters of all faiths, and I know I'm Catholic, and read the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and live it every day. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for the time.
You know, Mr. Allen, the fact that there are servants like you who have borne up under persecution that a lot of political leaders in this country do not care about is the thing that heartens the American people, and I'm confident the American people will resolve the situation no matter how weak Washington is in response. Mr. Jordan, I'm sorry I didn't reserve much time for you, but I yield to you.
Let's go to this questionnaire, because this questionnaire that was used by the FBI in these clearance discussions, I find very troubling. In the opening, in the sort of the preamble before they get to the questions, they say they're asking colleagues to rat on fellow colleagues. They say, you are being asked to provide information as a fact witness. Should you refuse to answer or fail to reply, action against your security clearance may be undertaken. So I find this amazing. Like, they're going to a colleague in a security clearance investigation, they're asking a colleague to talk about that individual, and if they don't, they're going to lose their security clearance. I mean, that, and then when you look at the question, do you find that a little troubling, Mr. Horowitz?
I certainly find I'm not sure I find necessarily the questioning of individuals about allegations troubling. How you tell them about it and talk to them about it is concerning, as you indicated, and certainly the questions were highly appropriate.
Certainly coupled together. Hey, we're doing a security investigation on Mr. Allen, as an example, and if you don't answer it, your security clearance is in jeopardy. And oh, by the way, here's the question. Did Mr. Allen ever voice support for President Trump? Did Mr. Allen ever express concerns about the COVID-19 vaccination? Did Mr. Allen ever attend a gun rally? That is as troubling as it gets. And right at the top of this questionnaire, FBI Security Division, Security Integrity and Investigation Section, Clearance Investigation Unit. Mr. Levitt, have you ever seen anything like this?
Not before this last round of whistleblowers, but I do think the point I tried to make earlier is even if this questionnaire was only typed up by a couple of individuals, and to be clear, those are the same ones that were worried about the Kelly cart. So they're the same ones that were worried that they're right. Supervisors. But even where in cases where this questionnaire wasn't used, we've heard from a number of whistleblowers that these types of things were asked about, and of course we know they factored into the decisions. And so I think it's not just about the questionnaire, right? I hope that the Inspector General's office will look at how all of these issues were focused on by leadership.
That's the element of fear Mr. Allen just talked about in his last response to Mr. Bishop. The fear, that environment of fear. And this is it in practice, right here. That is what is scary. So if that's not weaponization of government, earlier Ms. Crockett asked about would the weaponization of government include certain things. It would certainly include this in the environment described by Mr. Allen, and it would certainly include the 27 months that he had to live through and the 24 months now Garrett O'Boyle has had to live through. I'm going to thank all of you for being here. Mr. Allen, we really thank you. You're the one who's had to endure this, your testimony to the strength of your faith and your family, I think, is just inspiring. We appreciate your service to our country, service to this committee and to the country for telling your story and being willing to come forward and work with Mr. Levitt. Mr. Horowitz, we appreciate the work you've done over the years in getting this information to us. And with that, the committee stands adjourned.
So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Marcus Allen testimony, weaponized DOJ and FBI. It's out there. It's happening. Those are just my thoughts, just my opinions on all of this. And I would like to know what yours are. Please, down below, let me know. Like, subscribe, click that notification button so when we get information out, you can get information in, and we will see you on the next one. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.